I find it odd that 4 of the windows on the cover are in the book, while 4 of them aren't. Either some of the puzzles were changed, or the cover artist only read half the book.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
This review was commissioned through Patreon. Patreon! Give me your money! Jack Tarrant is a retired British police officer. He was tracking a devious serial killer named the Executive Executor, a madman who murders female executives and shaves their heads. Jack almost caught him, but the executor shot Jack, breaking his hip. Now he's stuck in a wheelchair, at least for a year. Jack was given a free Christmas vacation at Puzzle Manor. He goes with his ultra-sexy girlfriend Maria Lethbury. She's about 8 years younger than Jack, and she can't keep her hands off of him. As you can probably guess, this is a fictional book. I should note this book is for adults, not for children. Jack and Maria do adult things right at the start. After that, they discover an invitation card, which is the first puzzle. At the end of all 16 chapters, you get a puzzle, and readers can solve the puzzle on their own. You might have noticed the puzzle doesn't come with any instructions. In fact, it's kind of hard to figure out what the puzzle is here. It's just an invitation. Well, here's the solution. These spaced numbers refer to these letters. They spell out the word dear, and obviously this matches this, so you write dear down in that tile, but you need to flip the entire thing around first. Huh. You're not starting off on the right foot, puzzle book. In the chapel, they find a murdered clergyman. Roddy Stout, the hotel proprietor, says it must be the priest who came to do midnight mass. They can't call the police because there was an unexpected snowstorm, the phone lines are down, and they're trapped inside with a murderer. So either the murderer can predict the weather months in advance, or the murderer just got lucky. Roddy tries to cover up the murder because he doesn't want to upset the other guests. He tries and fails to get the guests introduced with a nice icebreaker game because they're too British for that sort of rot. Here are all of the suspects. Anders L. Timidson, the cook, who's the main suspect. Trenton Metcalf, who mostly gets drunk. Peggy Smith Browsley, who desperately wants to be upper class. She constantly feuds with Old Lady Deathridge, a mean woman. Trudy Bastable, her servant. Alexander Honeycutt, who's 13 years old, he makes a snowman. Colonel Honeycutt, an angry fellow. Celia Tranmere, an actress whose boyfriend didn't show up. Bob and Barbara Hood, the Americans on holiday. Count Leo Lianchi, who rarely talks. Finally, Nerisse and Jan, the 2 female staff members, and possible victims. They hear the scary story of the Puzzle family. 2 puzzles went mad whenever it snowed, and they killed themselves, but random papers found in the manor indicate the puzzles are still alive out there waiting for their next victims. You can recognize the puzzles because they only have 4 toes. Our heroes realize the victim wasn't a priest, he was somebody dressed up like a priest. They deduce he's Celia's missing boyfriend, and he only has 4 toes! Oh no! There are 3 puzzles found around the murder victim, including puzzle number 4, which was kind of unfair. You're supposed to recognize which notes are incorrectly labeled as half notes in this familiar Christmas tune that I've never heard of before. Because the plot demands it, the guests start a heated conversation about women's rights. The nobility don't like the idea of working women, or working period. Colonel Honeycutt hates working women because his wife died in an office. Anders gets angry and yells furiously because working women treat him and his restaurant's food like garbage. I don't know. This scene felt out of place to me. Is it a Christmas tradition in England to yell about random offensive topics? There's an anagram puzzle which stumps our heroes for a while because there's a trick with the letter I. As a result, they're too late to save the next victim, Anders. Roddy tries to cover up this murder too, but Colonel Honeycutt sees the corpse and sounds the alarm. Honeycutt and his son make the dangerous trek through the snow to get the police. The next puzzle reveals the culprit is the Executive Exterminator. Although, let's be honest, we all knew the puzzle-loving serial killer with a grudge against Jack was actually the culprit. Jack and Maria decide to take initiative, and they try to stop the killer, instead of sitting around waiting for the killer to strike again and give them more puzzles. That's a good idea. They probably should have done that 100 pages ago. They search the scene of Anders' murder, only to find his corpse has disappeared, and all the blood was red paint. Anders faked his own death. It was all a bluff. This more or less proves Anders is the culprit, until several chapters later when Jack realizes Anders' body was moved, it's hidden inside the snowman, a tricky double bluff. At 3 a.m., they hear a click from the reception area, even though the phone lines are dead. They realize the culprit is using the fax line as a phone line in order to communicate with their accomplice. The accomplice calls every hour on the hour until they get confirmation the message was received. The message is basically, "We're leaving by helicopter tomorrow." If you ask me, it seems like an unnecessarily complicated setup for the culprit to be told something they already know. Jack intercepts the message at 3 a.m. At 4, Jack and Maria see the culprit sneak into the reception area and get the message. At this point, our heroes should have rushed out and attacked the culprit, but no, they let the culprit get the message and slip away upstairs. Roddy does a terrible job of entertaining the guests, and Alexander returns with terrible news. Colonel Honeycutt was injured before they could reach the police. No one's coming to save them. Maria helps Alexander get settled upstairs. Jack becomes worried when Maria doesn't return. He and Trudy rush to the ice house where they find Maria's dead body hanging from a hook. At this point, Trudy brags she's the culprit along with her brother. She's clearly a madwoman, and her confession contains some awful things. The clues about the Puzzle family were fake. The 2 murder victims were random people. It was all just a complicated fake-out setup to get revenge on Jack. The ending is sort of a cheat. When readers weren't looking, Jack called the police and had them arrest Trudy's brother. He secretly recorded Trudy's confession, and Maria is still alive! She faked her own death with makeup and a harness. Where did they get a harness from? The end. Post-book follow-up. The book skips over what happened in between the discovery of Maria's corpse and Trudy's confession. What happened in that time? Trudy and Jack went to a different location, and he must have said something to trigger her confession, right? I wonder what it was. For all we know, she just wheeled him inside and confessed without prompting. In what I call false advertising, the book's flap claims this is like Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. That led me to believe everyone in the manor would be murdered, but nope. As the culprit said, the victims were 2 random people, and all the other guests were random strangers who have nothing at all to do with the mystery. That's kind of a letdown. I was expecting a bloodbath, not a flood of unrelated characters. I'm not going to discuss every puzzle in the book. Since the solution to every puzzle was a word or a few words, they were heavily skewed towards word puzzles. The most common puzzle was find specific letters in this message. There were a couple where you relate something to the number 26 in order to do a number cipher. I skipped some puzzles, like the crossword, because they were too difficult. Others I skipped because they seemed too tedious. Find all of the misspellings in this huge block of text in order to get a 4-letter word? No, thank you, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to skip ahead and read what the solution was. The final puzzle of the book reveals the name of Trudy's accomplice, Colonel Honeycutt. I messed up the last 2 words of the puzzle, but trust me, it's Colonel Honeycutt. That's what the solution is. That's the only puzzle in the book where the solution isn't contained. Readers have to solve it on their own. I thought that was kind of neat, and I think Honeycutt as the culprit works much better than the nasty woman's maid who rarely talked. Overall, the book is a neat idea. It's a murder mystery with some twists, and it's regularly peppered with puzzles that you can skip if you're not a puzzle fan. But the ending was a total cheat. I think the 2 culprits should have been swapped, and it was disappointing to learn that most of the characters and events were unrelated to the story. Overall, I'd say I didn't enjoy it. I give the Christmas Crimes at Puzzle Manor a 2 out of 10.